Welcome, Realtor family, to our second virtual town hall. As we continue to thirst for information and find out more about how we should be operating across the state, this task force, and thanks again, task force members, is committed to giving you both what you're asking for and what we need right now. Right as we speak, the most requested information remains. The CARE Act and how it applies directly to realtors, their loved ones, their friends. Questions like, can I get unemployment, or is it right, or is it wrong, and what about the loans that are available under the CARES Act? The latest on appraisal and what's going on from one association to another association. So we have several different panelists with us this week to help us out. And those panelists are, starting with, in no particular order, Carter Martin Jr. He is a KYR delegate. He's also in this year's leadership class. He leads a team in Louisville with the Simmons Company. Then we have Norm Jones. Norman Jones is an Eastern Kentucky appraiser. He's a past president of KYR and a realtor with Big Sandy Realty. And then we have joining us today as well on our panel, Justin Landon, the CEO of LBAR, the Lexington Bluegrass Association of Realtors. Then John Reinhart, and John is a CPA MBA, and he's the CFO of small businesses. He's a small business owner and founder of several different startup companies. Along with John on that panel is Jason Bigg. And Jason Bigg is an independent CPA that does a lot of work with small businesses, and so he's got a lot of expertise on the CARES Act. Also possibly joining us will be Lindsay Gaddie, and Lindsay is the business development manager with the Republic Bank. Again, she may be joining in. So let me turn this over to your moderator, NAR Director, past president of KYR, and owner of the Breland Group, Lamont Breland.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Kentucky Realtors, for being on this call. We're just trying to get you guys and girls the information you need as quickly as we can. And I think the catchphrase now is moving target. We hear that from everybody, and it certainly is. And a couple of the things that have been kind of top of mind have been the CARES Act and also Kentucky unemployment. So I know a lot of our agents now are reporting that they have been successful with Kentucky unemployment. The CARES Act, not so much. And apparently as of a couple hours ago, the funds have dried up and banks are no longer taking applications. And our Lindsay from Republic Bank texted and said she could not make the call because she's been on hold with SBA about an applicant who was fraudulent in their claim. And she reiterated that there will be no further applications accepted and the money has effectively dried up unless there is a CARES Act 2.0, which many say will be coming down the pike. So wanted to start off again to our panel. Thank you all for being here. Not all of you are directly in the industry, but you are in the business community. One of our success stories has been Carter Martin Jr. out of Louisville. He mentioned that he's had some success with Kentucky unemployment, and I think he's going to quickly preface his statements by saying he's not an expert, but these are just his experiences. So Carter, tell us a little bit about what you've experienced.
Hello, Lamont and Lester and all of my realtor brothers and sisters. It's good to see some faces other than my kids for the time being. I have applied for and received unemployment successfully. With talking to a couple of other agents, we've kind of talked to a couple that have not received it successfully, and myself, and then another that has received it successfully, and kind of compared some notes to see, what are probably some tips that made us who were successful be able to get it versus those who weren't. The first thing to note is these links to apply for the unemployment in Kentucky. We do have those links on our KY Realtors website. under the COVID bullet points that we have on that website. So one thing to note, when you go on there to apply, the system is not set up for us, right? It's not set up for 1099 realtors, real estate agents, because typically we can't apply for those benefits, but we have to use the system that is there. And one thing to note while you are applying for those benefits, if your business has been affected by this COVID pandemic, is to make sure that you, and I'm getting a little bit of a screen share here.
Lamont, are you wanting to share that right now? You're muted. I
thought it may be helpful.
Okay, just want to make sure it was intentional.
Is this the application that you use? This is the one that we've been getting from our agents.
Okay, so I'll talk about that in just a second, that piece there.
Okay.
So when you go online to apply for the unemployment, it's important that you know, number one, the system was not built for us. And so some of the questions you're going to see, as far as in my experience, not my expertise, but my experience, some of those questions seem confusing to us because they're not for us. So questions like, are you working? You know, what was the reason for your separation of employment and things of that nature? What I did and some of my other colleagues have done is we made sure that we answered those questions honestly and to the best of our ability for the question that was being asked, because a lot of these questions are drop down box questions, and things like why have you been separated from your employer? And so the best answer there in the drop down was because of lack of work. So, you know, we're not being fraudulent or lying in any of our answers. We're making sure that we're answering those questions to the best of our ability and to the closest answer to our circumstance, if that makes any sense. And so the other thing, after you answer these questions and do the drop down boxes and things of that nature, it does give you opportunity to type in explanations of why you're separated and things of that nature. And this comes to my first tip of why we think that one agent was not able to get benefits so far and a couple of others were. You want to make sure that anytime it's asking you for explanation of separation or whatever the question may be, because they ask it a few different times, a few different ways, you want to make sure that you're referencing COVID-19, coronavirus, the pandemic, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you're referencing that, because the agent that did not get any benefits, they applied March 30th and still have not received any benefits. They never mentioned COVID-19 in any of their replies. Okay, they never mentioned the coronavirus. They just said, you know, they were off work, or they were working, but in the system they were off work. So that's my first tip, is to make sure that you are referencing the COVID-19. I'm not sure how they are processing claims. I filed my first claim on Thursday, this past Thursday, and I had my first deposit in my account on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, which is a pretty quick turnaround. So make sure if you are applying for the benefits to reference COVID-19 in all of your statements. I probably overkilled it. Anytime if they asked me where I lived, I'd give them my address and say, "Now I've been affected due to COVID-19."
Yeah.
So
That's
anytime
good.
that I had opportunity to type something in, an explanation, I made sure I referenced that. And that's probably the biggest tip, our first tip, biggest tip that we can say that you should do. Okay. Also, another thing in the system that is confusing some people is when you go through the whole process and you've got everything typed in, on the account summary page, it's saying basically that you are not, if I can pull mine up, if I can read it, it says you do not have sufficient wages to establish a regular UI claim, period. You may still be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, period. Once set up, a message will be displayed above left. And so that message was there the second day when I went back in the system to look at the status, that message was there. That message is still there today, but I have received benefits, okay? So I don't want that to scare you and confuse you. I remember the governor saying one time on the news that it's going to probably tell you that you're denied because the system's not set up for you. But don't fret, make sure you apply for the benefit, okay? So that's my next one. The form that Lamont had up brings me to my next point. It's going to ask you who your employer is. And we all know that we're 1099 self-contractors, correct? But the way you want to answer that question is who you are affiliated with, who is your brokerage, okay? Because we're answering these questions honestly and as close to as we can. So I am with Simmons and Realtors, but I also have my own company. So I get paid W-2 from my company. So I put my company name. And so this form that you see here is a form that they send out to the broker or to the company that you put on that form, okay? So you want to make sure that you put your brokerage name in there, or if you're in my case and file W-2 for myself, I put my company name. So you want to make sure that you're answering that question. That's a little confusing to some people because we all know we're self-contractors, but put that company name. They will then get this form basically. And Lamont, can you scroll up on that? I want to see if your form said the same thing that mine did.
Is it up there?
It does not on mine. So when I got mine, it actually said the reason for it said the claimant has provided the following explanation regarding the reason for claim filing.
Here it is on C.
COVID-19.
Reason for separation.
Yeah, so mine came pre-printed, Lamont.
Okay, gotcha.
That. So it could be a little different now.
Right.
But so make sure that you're putting that in there, and your employer, your brokerage will get this form. Now, how they fill that form out, is up to them and things like that. But typically, an employer gets this form to so that they can, if they don't agree with why the employee said they're separated, that they can respond to that, correct?
Right.
They have some form of rebuttal. Typically, I don't think you have to turn that back in unless the reason that the person claimed versus your reason is different. But that's for you and your human resources to kind of weigh that and figure that out. So,
all right, well, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I've got a couple questions here, and then I'm going to ask John Reinhart to jump on here, and Jason Bigg if he's on. My primary question is, my primary residence is in Kentucky. I'm also licensed in Indiana. Do I apply only in Kentucky? I'm sure you're probably not qualified to answer that, but you may be. Does anybody know? Anybody know for sure? All right. Okay, good. All right, John, are you on?
I am.
All right, John. So John is a partner of mine on a project, and he is he's got a CPA and an MBA, but that's not why he's here. He's here because he's the CFO of about 4 businesses now, startup types, and he's been kind of in the thick of this personally. So, John, any takeaways that you can share?
Sure, I'll give you a couple tips. The first one is, if you don't know your banker and have a relationship, that's probably something you should figure out very quickly. So the banks are the lenders of this program, even though it says SBA. The banks are giving the money out under the SBA program, but people that had a relationship with their bank did very well here if the bank worked on the process and was ready for it. A lot of the banks were not ready for it. Some of the banks did very well. The bottom line is the smaller banks did very well in terms of expediting paperwork. There was a single form, kind of like filling out a mortgage lending application, which you all would be more familiar with. And that application changed 3 times during the process. So there's a form that I'll make sure Lamont, I think I sent it to you, that has the 8 questions on the front is the right form. even though they shut down the applications now, effective 10 a.m. this morning, they ran out of the first tranche of money. There is strong belief they will replenish the bucket of money. So I would suggest anybody that's interested in filing to get familiar with that form that I shared with Lamont quickly. The highlights on the form are everybody that owns 20% of the ownership of the company, the legal entity, will be on the hook to do a DocuSign if you file electronically, or they'll be on the hook to do a paper signature of that form that Lamont has. The second thing I would tell you is the biggest discrepancy is the definition of payroll. Everything is determined by payroll from last year on an average 12-month basis. So payroll has three tricky pieces that I think are very important to realize. Payroll is not just W-2 wages, it's the taxes and the health insurance benefits that go into wages. The two questions that have been really difficult to, as more guidance comes out, is what's a 1099? Is that an employee for wages for the company, or is that not? I told Lamont that to me, the latest guidance, and Jason can comment, is that a 1099 contractor is not technically an employee under the calculation of payroll. Health insurance benefits and taxes do qualify. The other one is if you're guaranteed payments, if you're a small business, a lot of small business owners and LLCs take guaranteed payments, that appears to be allowable as wages, but I'm not giving accounting advice or legal advice here, but that's one of the things I know Jason and them and the firms have been trying to wrap their minds around. But the biggest tip I told Lamont is if you have any concerns that this is not a grant, so everybody has the assumption this is just automatically forgivable. It is not. It is forgivable if you give documentation that you met the requirements for it to be forgiven. If not, it becomes a 1% loan for a 10-year period with deferred payments till later in this year. It's still, if you need money for your business, 1% loans are hard to get regardless. But just make sure that nobody just misinterprets. It's not automatically forgivable. So the comment I made to Lamont this morning, the advice was put it in a separate account and try to run the expenses related to what you spend it on into that account so you can keep track of it. But I'll turn it over to Jason from there.
Hey, I have a comment. Could I interrupt, John?
Sure.
I actually spoke with my bank. I'm not going to name the bank, and my lender, who I have a relationship with. And as most of us as realtors, we're either sole proprietors. The bulk of us are sole proprietors. And what I discovered in this process is that they're taking, number one, your net, not your gross, on your 1099 that you receive from your broker. Well, as most sole proprietors and small business owners, I don't have to go any further. That process that we, being responsible and paying taxes at the end of the day, what our net is. But it does affect on your compensation through this PPP program. Basically, it's null and void. It's not going to help us much. In most cases, I don't know what most realtors, at the end of the day after their expenses, what their true net is. But net income is discretionary money, not non-discretionary. And your gross is where the non-discretionary is represented on a Schedule C. Am I correct? So that was my argument with my banker, and he basically told me that they needed 2019 returns, whereas you all know 2019 has now been extended to July 15th. So now we have an issue there. So do you need 2019? Why can't you use 2018? So there's still a lot out there that's going on that's frustrating for the sole proprietors. And I just wanted to share that. That was personal. So I'll mute myself and I'll listen to your responses.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if Jason is on the call. Jason, are you on the call? Okay, he may not be on the call.
Are there any questions? I'll be happy to answer so I'm not a realtor, so that is a little bit of a nuance. This individual sectors of what's a 1099 and what's the gross net, most of the proof when you try to get forgiveness on this loan, there's three things that you can use the loan for that get forgiveness. The employee related stuff I mentioned to you, Before it's taxes and payroll. If it's payroll, W-2 payroll is the easiest thing to defend, and health insurance and related benefits around, employee benefits. And then it's utilities and or rent. And so those three, at the end of this period, I suspect the bankers will ask for documentation of your amount you received and the spending you did. Only 25% of your grant, only 25% of your loan, not your grant, will be forgiven for utilities and rent versus payroll. So they're looking for people to keep people on payroll, spend a majority on payroll and benefits, and obviously that's what it's for, payment protection. And then they do allow 25% of the monies to go towards utilities, mortgage interest, not mortgage payments, and rent. And again, this is study the form. The form's pretty explanatory. And if it does open back up and you do qualify, it's probably a program worth taking the steps to do. But the bankers are routing these things. So just like the other gentleman said, working with your bank is really your primary avenue.
Okay, that's good. Jason is trying to get on the call. So while we're waiting for him, and John, I know you're busy. Feel free to jump off anytime if you have to. But thank you so far for being on. We appreciate you being here. So I want to switch gears just a little bit, and then Jason will probably call. I'd like to talk to Justin. Justin, are you on the call?
Sure I am, Lamont.
Okay, Justin is the CEO of the Lexington Bluegrass Association of Realtors, and wanted to ask him on here. He's a tip of the arrow kind of guy, keeps on top of everything, and how many members do you all have now?
About 3,500.
Okay, so what's going on at LBAR? And you all have a unique jurisdiction. You're not just in Lexington; you're all over the state. So what are you hearing from your members, and what kind of struggles are you seeing, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little bit about some of the stuff that Carter was talking about as well, because I actually spoke with 4 realtors this morning who have received unemployment benefits. And I think one of the things that we're struggling with is every realtor situation is a little bit different. And, for example, if you're a true 1099, you don't W-2 yourself, do you send that employment verification to your broker? Do you send it to yourself? I've heard it both ways. I actually have an agent who's currently receiving unemployment benefits. She just sent it to herself. She approved her own employment status and certified that she had lost work, which is interesting, but it worked. I think the biggest challenge we're seeing is not so much getting through the process, it's that the amounts are varying. So even for people that make the same amount of money. And so we've seen some people are receiving $180 a week, and some people are receiving $780 a week. And I haven't heard any other number other than those 2 numbers, unless they're a W-2 employee, because then it's based on what they're paid as W-2 employees. And so some are receiving the $180 a week, which is the unemployment insurance. And then the ones that are receiving $780 a week are also receiving a $600 pandemic boost that's coming from the federal government that we've all heard about, that additional $600 a week. And so I'm trying to get to the bottom of figuring out why some are getting 180 and some are getting 780. And then I see somebody in the chat said they're getting 310 a week. And I've heard 310 a week for several people who are W-2s. So I guess long story short is we don't fully understand who's getting what and why they're getting what they're getting. But the good news is I haven't really heard anybody that's gone through the process and been diligent about following up once they realize they did it wrong the first time, that hasn't received funds. And as Carter said, received funds pretty quickly. So that's encouraging. I know we're asking, as we speak, I've got our government affairs director, Crystal Long, reaching out to the unemployment office to see if she can get to the bottom of figuring out that difference in amount. Because I know, if it's only going to be $180 a week, we'll take what we can get, right? But that's not enough to make an enormous difference. $500, $600, $700 a week sounds like something that could actually help sustain people during a protracted period of loss of income. So we are really working on that. One thing I'll note, I also saw a couple of questions about this, that people are concerned about, what if I get paid? What if I go to closing while I'm collecting unemployment? And you have to recertify your unemployment every 2 weeks. So you'll just tell them how much you made, and your benefit may adjust, but it will readjust when you don't have anything coming after that. So just, don't worry about that. You don't have to send your license in. You can keep working. Apply, right? Apply as soon as you can, because we need folks to have access to funds, because we all know we're about to start hurting if we're not already. As for some of the other things that I've heard talked about, like the PPP program, I'm aware of at least one real estate team in Lexington that did receive a PPP loan. So some of our members were able to get access to it. I'm sure there are others that we haven't heard about yet. I am expecting, everybody's talking about, I moderated a panel for NAR last week, and we talked about an additional $250 billion likely to be appropriated for the PPP program. So as John said, get your applications into your bank. The amounts are going to vary widely depending on the way you're structured as a business. But I would strongly encourage people to apply as soon as possible. And then the EIDL loans, which I haven't heard anybody mention yet because nobody's really excited about paying an interest rate. But you have to be aware on those EIDL loans, which you can apply online. You don't have to go through a lender. You're guaranteed, if you're approved, a $10,000 grant that is totally forgivable as part of the EIDL loans. And you can only ask for $10,000 if you want. You don't have to take out a loan. So if the PPP is not working out for you, I would look at those EIDL loans. The SBA website has greatly improved its process. I actually went through the entire application myself just to see how hard it would be. I did that 3 weeks ago and it was miserable. And I did it last week and it was blissful. So they've made huge improvements in that application process. So I would strongly encourage people to also check out that on the SBA website. For LBAR members, I've sent that link out to that application in several emails. But if you are interested, you can just give anybody in the State's welcome to call our office, and we'll be happy to get you a link to that application. As for what's going on at our association level, I mean, from a statistics perspective, we're certainly seeing a bit of a slowdown. Our numbers say that we're down somewhere between, new listings are down about 25% year over year. New listings week by week. Pendings are down about 20%. But what I've found really encouraging, and I would share my screen if anybody cares, but I built a couple of graphs, and if you look at the trend lines of new listings and pendings, what we're seeing is the trend lines look identical. They're just 20 to 30% less. So, they're going up and down week by week, almost mirroring year over year with just a 20% haircut. And what that tells me is that, that's very encouraging, right? That means that the market is still functioning. There's just a 20 to 30% haircut from people that just aren't engaging right now. So I'm very optimistic. We've been injecting as much of that optimism into our membership as possible. Not trying to be intentionally optimistic, but I think there's lots to be optimistic about. So I would say our biggest challenge for membership is our members just really don't fully understand how to apply for assistance. So that's our biggest hurdle right now. And I really appreciate KYR's leadership in hosting webinars like this. We're doing the same. And yeah, operationally, we've issued guidance to our members about how to behave. We had Governor Beshear on our board of directors call yesterday, and we're delighted to have him inform us that there has not been a single complaint to the governor's office about the behavior of real estate professionals in the state of Kentucky. And I think that's tremendously exciting. Let's keep that up. We told him that we would be self-policing as much as we could to maintain that level. And one other thing I'll share, he shared with us, was that they have gone from 12 employees in unemployment to 1,000.
Wow.
Managing the volume of unemployment. So just that growth in that department is obviously a huge explanation why things have been a struggle. And I would encourage our members not to get discouraged. Keep at it. I have every expectation that they will honor their commitment to getting unemployment benefits to our members. We just have to be persistent.
Justin, are you able to share that screen, that
yeah,
chart?
You betcha.
Yeah, I've got a couple people want to see it. While you're doing that, I'm going to ask Jason Bigg, are you on the call yet?
I am.
Okay, Jason. Jason's a CPA here in town, and just thought he might have some insights. I know things kind of a moving target, but what are you seeing with some of your business clients?
Some of my business clients are really, it's a tale of two lenders. Depending on who your bank is, the experience varies widely. And there was some confusion early on about who was eligible and who was not, and what was payroll costs versus not payroll costs, and what's forgivable versus not forgivable, and how wages were calculated. Lots of banks were coming up with calculations that were trying to back out your withholdings and employee side of payroll tax, et cetera, out of the wage calculations, which was incorrect. turned out to be incorrect. Just a lot of confusion in the market, a lot of misconceptions kind of fanned by a lot of people who are trying to get their arms around it. And
what I guess the one thing that I keep hearing is that as far as the PPP is that most banks are only allowing those folks that have an existing business relationship, and most realtors don't have business checking accounts set up. So they're being turned away, especially from the larger banks. Some of the smaller ones have been a little more, little easier to work with in that regard. Is that a fair statement?
That has been my experience, yes. Republic, Commonwealth, Stockyards, the local banks have all had much more favorable experiences from their clients, as have PNC and
some of the bigger ones.
Some of the bigger ones, Chase.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, Justin, any luck with your slide over there? You there, Justin? Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. Norman, are you there? Norman Jones?
Yeah, I'm with you, Lamont.
All right. So Norman is a past president of KYR. He's a realtor and an appraiser in Eastern Kentucky. He's also an NAR director. Norman, what are you seeing in your neck of the woods in terms of appraisals and issues there and just the overall market?
Well, just to talk about appraisals in general, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are working and have worked to ease the process a little bit. They're allowing appraisers to do a drive-by or an exterior appraisal on the property instead of going inside. Caveat there, though, is it's up to the appraiser to make sure that they have credible data to be able to do the report. So regardless of whether they go inside or not, they still have to have the information to be able to, be competent with the value they come up with.
Gotcha.
Now also they're letting you use, say, the homeowner or the agent wants to go in and do a video of the inside of the house and send that to the appraiser. They're going to allow us to do that. The other thing to look at on that is it's going to come down to the lender as well, whether the lender is going to accept an exterior versus an interior. So even though Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae say you can do an exterior, your lender may say, no, we still want you to go inside because that's what we're comfortable with.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, good. So I've got a couple questions over here. This may be a CPA question. It says, I'm a realtor, but also retired, receiving a pension. Do I qualify for unemployment? Anybody take that one?
Typically, you have to have been employed first, either self-employed under the new law, or employed by an employer and have it be your primary employer for 9 months before you're eligible.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would just comment on that, Lamont, and just say that if you're receiving a retirement benefit in some way, a pension or Social Security or any other kind of retirement benefit, I think you would just report that as part of your application, and it may reduce your benefit. It may reduce your benefit to zero, but it still may behoove you to apply because if you're not earning the income you would normally expect to earn in real estate as an independent contractor, then that would just be offset from what you were collecting through whatever retirement funds you had available. So I would apply and just be very clear and upfront and honest, as Carter said, about what your income is.
And I would agree with Justin there, Lamont. I actually read that on the unemployment website. Just make sure that, just as Justin said, you're reporting any income that you're receiving, and they will make the determination.
Okay. So
Correct.
just be transparent.
For realtors, yes. If you're receiving, it's immaterial if you're receiving retirement benefits or Social Security. It just doesn't matter when it comes to applying for unemployment benefits. If you're self-employed and have been self-employed selling real estate, then you would qualify. And whatever you're earning outside is really immaterial to your status.
And also another point, Lamont, just really quick, I think it was Justin when he was talking about when you have a closing, just make sure that you report those earnings. Keep applying for the benefits, but make sure you report the earnings. And I was also told that because unemployment office looks at the date that the money was earned, not so much when it was paid. So the date that you would want to use for the day that you made that money was the day of closing. You know, even if it takes a day or two for your company to get you paid or whatnot, the day you earned that money was the day you closed, as far as the system's concerned.
Good stuff. Okay. Thanks, Carter. All right. So let's, oh, there it is. Good job. Does everybody see that slide? And we can also have these on the KY Realtors
And these
coronavirus page.
I'll note these are exclusive to LBAR's 26 county jurisdiction. But you know, if you look at the top line is orange, the top line is 2020, the bottom line is 2019. And what I was talking about with those trends, I mean, it's not quite as dramatic as in 2020 or 2019, but you're still seeing a rise and fall week to week that is somewhat similar to the rise and fall that was happening in 2019. You see here, we're down 9% year to date in total new listings. I'll note, we were critically low in inventory in January, so it's not like that's just coronavirus. And then down 26% last week. We were down 30% the week before that, so less of a decrease last week. And then here with pending transactions, we're still up year to date on total number of pending transactions that have come through the MLS. And then we were down 19% in pendings last week. You know, I anticipate that maybe to drop a little bit more here in the third week of April, but you know, all told, it's not like it's a cliff. It's just a downhill slope.
Would you be able to maybe keep this going once a week and send it to us so we can kind of keep track of what's going on in your area?
Sure, we've been tracking it week by week. We have a few other week by week metrics that we've been using. For those of you that don't know, Showing Time has a phenomenal graph available for those boards that use Showing Time, or MLSs that use Showing Time. Showing Time has a week by week showing metric too that's showing what's happening with showings. And that decrease has been far more dramatic. What I like to remind people though is a decrease in showings doesn't necessarily mean a decrease in buyers. It just means those buyers looking at, like me and my wife, we're not looking at 40 properties in a weekend, right? Nobody's doing that right now. It's mostly just, you know, they're being very picky and choosy about what they're seeing.
Right, that's good. All right, so we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. Just want to again remind everybody about the KY Realtors website. There's a one page dedicated just to this crisis, and it's updated daily. And then all of our meetings are being recorded and will be on there to take a look. Steve Stevens, CEO of Kentucky Realtors, let us in on what Lauren Shune was talking about on your all's call, and maybe a quick intro of our call on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks, Lamont. I really appreciate the discussion today too. It's been excellent and a lot of helpful things. And to drill down just into LBAR's jurisdiction is very interesting because it does represent a diversity. But even with that much diversity, we're still even more diverse if you look all the way across the state. And Paul Del Rio, who's also helping manage this call, collects our data for us. And perhaps Lamont will throw some of that on there too with LBAR's data to share because, you know, we get a lot of reports. We have a weekly call with all the AEs here and discuss with them how their markets are doing, and it's quite interesting. On Monday, the state association execs, all my counterparts, had a call that we have every week with the NAR leadership. And this week we had Lawrence Yoon, who's the chief economist for NAR, speaking to us. And he was giving us a bit of a forecast because, you know, also all the associations plan their budgets around the forecast, which usually follows, you know, whether the membership will go up and down based on the fact of whether or not the real estate market and the economy are any good. So, you know, we're very tuned in to all those things. But Lawrence basically said, you know, real estate is churning all across the country. And basically he, you know, completely admits that there is a slowdown that's coming. But he said there's such a distinct difference in what is going to happen this year and what we're going to feel versus what we felt during the Great Recession of 08 and 09. And clearly it's the result of home prices staying up, and they are not going to fall. In fact, in 2021, they will rise even more. And so that's one of the reasons why buyers don't seem to be panicking and don't seem to be rushing to drop their price to get rid of it, that they're sticking with it because they really believe that buyers will return when the country reopens. And Lawrence Yun basically says, yes, that we will be seeing a rebound, that this will be occurring this year fairly robustly when the country reopens. We had a lot of momentum coming into this year, and we had so much momentum, it carried us forward through the first quarter. And, as we get into the second quarter, the slowdown will occur quite a lot. Third quarter start to return again, and then fourth quarter will go. But, using the economic logic that they will look at, very soon and now as they are looking at the recovery, basically home sales and home prices are going to rise. That means, more people will be in this business too. But, he said, they don't believe that, a lot of folks are going to drop out of this business, quite frankly. The stimulus in his mind will help a whole lot, and the rebound will be there. And the good news for us is one of the things he pointed at was that the southern states will do better, according to the data he's got, than the northern states. So that means we should actually be better off than a lot of the other places of the country. Lamont said, we are going to have a broker call teleconference similar to this for all brokers across the state on next week's on Tuesday, 12:45. And Lawrence Yun is going to join us, and he is going to give us about 20 minutes on this subject. He's also going to be a guy that's going to answer a few questions. And I've asked him if he could really focus a little bit more on this region of the country and see if we can't get some data from that, because I feel like that's the news brokers and those who are looking out for agents and thinking about the business side will really benefit from. So that will be coming next week, and an invitation should go out hopefully by the end of today. But that's it, Lamont.
Okay, great. So as Steve said, Tuesday, April 21st, 12:45 p.m. KYR identified, I think, 1,400 brokers across the state and have sent invites out to them to be on the call. We're going to have 12 actual brokers on the call. We've got, I think, 3 from Louisville, 3 from LBAR, 2 from Northern Kentucky, and the balance from around the state. So they'll just be kind of sharing best practices and what's working, what's not working, and all of that stuff. And then, of course, Lawrence Yun will be on the call, which is quite an honor to be able to have him. He's a great speaker and just a good guy. So anyway, just thank you all for being here. Please text us, email us any thoughts or ideas you have for guests that could be on this Zoom call. We're trying to do it once a week until we get through this thing. But we don't want to just do it to do it. We want to be adding value to your all's businesses, and we can't do it alone. So please reach out to us and let us know what we can do better. So with that, thank you all for being here, and hope we'll see you on Tuesday, 12:45 p.m. Take care. Be safe.
Good job, Lamont. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Lamont.
Okay. See ya.